So just thinking about counselling and thinking about online counselling, and an important aspect of counselling is confidentiality and how that is held. And I'm just wondering kind of what are your concerns around confidentiality and around the potential of online confidentiality?
I think with counselling being provided online, there is a certain, hesitation to the confidentiality. There's a level of trust that you've got to have between you and your counsellor, especially regarding the fact that, you need to be able to trust that your counsellor is in a confidential space and that there aren't people around. But also there's the concern about young people not having a confidential, safe space where they can, be as honest as they need to be with their counsellor. What's the solution to that if a young people isn't certain that they can, have that sense of confidentiality?
I hear you. A valid concern, I think, as well. And I'll start with the second part of what you said. If a young person who's in counselling doesn't have their own confidential space, I think one thing is at number 5, we are flexible with our clients, and the counsellors, especially when you're working online, there is no fixed time of where they'll see their clients. So it may be possible with that counsellor who you do have to arrange for a slot where the young person may have a bit more of a confidential space. Maybe they'll have the house to themselves, maybe no one will be in their room, but they can arrange to another time that will suit them. It's also possible that if that counsellor can't, number 5 will allocate you another counsellor who may be better suited for your time. So you wouldn't go back to the waiting list and have to go through the waiting list again. You would be allocated to someone who matched your availability really as soon as possible. So there would be the sort of ways that we navigate that. I think also it's important to say that if it's possible, the in-person counselling may be an option. And obviously if they do come in person and a young person does have a space which, soundproof walls, is just them and the counsellor, and is as confidential in terms of no one else will hear whatever they're saying. How does that sound to your question regarding whether the young person has a confidential space of themselves?
Yeah, that's great. When we're talking about the other part of the confidentiality, is it that a counsellor will be in that meeting room completing the session online? So is that how the confidentiality is kept when the meetings are online? How can a young person be certain that their counsellor is in an area where others won't overhear what's being said?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the first thing you said about how can a young person know that their counsellor is somewhere where no one else can hear. And I know some counsellors who will use a meeting room, one of the counselling rooms during the day, maybe when they're not being used by others, and they may meet in there, and that'd be one way of knowing that was confidential. I think in other times, people may work from home or work from a separate confidential space. I think in those cases, it's part of the counsellor's responsibility at the start of the contract with the client to reassure and explain that they are in a confidential space, that no one else can hear them. For example, when I worked online, you could see my door closed at the back of it. Now, that shows at least that the door is closed and that no one that's outside the room can hear. And I appreciate you may not be able to see the whole room. And then that's where the element of trust comes in. And a large part of the counsel relationship is built on trust, and it is built both ways. And maybe that takes a bit of time. So I think it's important for the counsellors early on really to, I think, explore that idea with the client and ask how they feel about the space they're in, and if it's appropriate and if they feel they trust it. And I think it's fair as well for the client to want the counsellor to say, as you can see, I'm in a room on my own, or if you can't see that I'm in a room on my own, no one can hear what you're saying, it is just you and I. I think that can be quite a helpful part of the initial sort of contracting stage in online counselling. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that that reiteration from the counsellor, confirming, yes, it is just you and I, you are safe to speak about what is on your mind. I think that that's a really important way of doing it, and actually helping the client, feel as though they are in a safe place to speak. Yeah.
I agree. I think I would encourage every client that it's their right to want to know that if they're speaking online, if they're not in the room, and that if anyone maybe feels some sort of way about asking, that ask. I know those things are hard, and I'm not undermining that, but that it's okay to ask is really the message I
Yeah.
want to get.
Yeah, brilliant.
What other thoughts may you have around online counselling, and yeah, I guess limits of confidentiality, maybe just if there are any concerns that you have?
So I'm aware that No5 has an outcome measures sheet that is provided at the beginning of a counselling session. How is this going to be done when counselling is performed online? Because I know that there is an element where if it is done as like a question and answer or the screen shared, there might be a hesitation towards revealing the truth behind the questions, and that can, you know, not be great for the efficacy of the session.
I hear you, that element of pressure, I guess, that may put some people off by being completely honest, maybe, of where they're feeling. Yeah, so the outcome measure sheets in person are very much, I guess, in the room, lead it with the client. Usually what I do is I wait as the client finishes, and then we'll start the session from there. Now, online, how it can work is in a similar way. So usually on the first session, we wouldn't have had any sort of contact with the client before. So the first session, we would do the outcome measure sheet together. And by together, I mean, I would share it as the session started. I would share my screen, or I would share them the file via email. And because it's a shared document file, whatever they update at that time updates automatically onto my document as well. The alternative way to do it is I could ask them, I could read out each one, ask them to indicate which number was most appropriate for how they're feeling, and then I could measure it myself and write it myself and store it that way. Now that tends to be the practice and what I've done, especially in the first session, because we haven't met yet. I think after that, what's really important to ask is what is most comfortable for the client and what they prefer. Now there are options. So for example, each session, we can do it in the way where I share the file, and during the session, the young person just goes through it and I wait for them to finish, and then we get on with the session. It could be that they prefer I read it out to them and I select myself. It could be that maybe they want it 10 minutes beforehand, and that they will work through it themselves just before. And you want to give it close to the session to give a true indication of how you're feeling. That's one of the benefits of it. And that could be an option. I think really after the first session, after that initial meet, it's about discussing that with the client, asking the client what their preference would be, and seeing if we can facilitate that for them, and having that honest conversation about, yeah, what we can do, what we may not be able to do, and then giving them options to choose from.
Okay, so there is an element of flexibility on how that can be done to ensure that it is an accurate reflection of.
I think there is, and I think it's important to, because I think different people may want different things. And if they want to go through it together, okay. And if they want you to wait for them as they finish it in their own time, okay. And if they would like to do it beforehand, just beforehand, and fill it out so that it's ready just as the session starts, I think okay too. I think the important thing is within the options that we can do, discussing that, engaging in that conversation with the client so that they're able to choose and that they can pick, and then hopefully there'll be an agreement made between them that at least then they'll try that, and maybe after a few sessions maybe they want to change it again, but still for it to be something able to be discussed with the counsellor and with the client.
That's brilliant, thank you.
When I was talking about the outcome measure sheets, it made me think about how we store data online, and I think again another bit of important information that clients deserve to know. So No5 has a secure software and database system. So all sort of outcome measure sheet responses, for example, would be stored there, and a client isn't identified by their name on those sheets, but by an ID number, which is obviously anonymous, which someone from the street wouldn't just be able to see and know, oh, that's them. The number might be 543, for example. But that'd be one way of anonymizing it. And then beyond that, anyone counsellors like me, if we do use online counselling and maybe we use a laptop device, that laptop device has to be password secured as well. So there's that element of, okay, so getting onto the laptop anyways has some security. And then there's an additional level of security, which is within the No5 database software system that separates anything to do with the client. And in those cases as well, it's then anonymized as well. So it wouldn't be the client's name on the outcome measure sheet or on the information that we have. It would be their number that identifies them. The information that we would have as a counsellor online would be their name, their email address, and their mobile, so that we can reach out and get in contact with them. And then, like I said, it's our responsibility to keep it on that system so it stays secure, and then have it again on a laptop that is password protected with an additional layer of security to it.
Okay, so all of the data is protected under GDPR regulations, and so there's no way that that's going to have any issues on that side.
Yes, we do abide by the GDPR regulations, and thank you for reminding me of the key term. But yeah, we're up to date, and I think the way of that I've described it indicates the levels that there are to it, and that data protection is taken seriously. Confidentiality absolutely taken seriously, and very early on in the first session, what counsellors will do with clients is explain confidentiality and explain the limits of it, and especially for online counselling, what's relevant to online counselling, so that the client knows from the start what they can expect, so that they can, I think, get to focus on what they want to focus on.
Excellent, that's really good to hear.